Presenting the Orange Blossom Trailblazers with your hosts, Catherine Cochia and Kalitha Anderson. Hey, Kalitha.
Hey, Catherine. We're back.
We're back again with another amazing interview.
I am so excited for this interview. Who are we interviewing?
You know her. You love her. It is Dr. Gail Kauwell.
Listen, I am so excited to learn more about what Dr. Kauwell has done. And I have to say, I'm a little bit partial because she's from the University of Florida. Go Gators, guys. But listen, you guys are going to be in for a treat. She is such the trailblazer. And tell us a little bit more why.
Yeah, this one was a fun one for me because I had Dr. Kauwell as a student back in the day. But hearing the amazing work that she did specifically with legislative issues, she was the president the year that the legislation finally passed. She was really instrumental in all of the different challenges that we've had with legislation along the way. She tells stories about what it was like trying to get that bill passed. And she's just done so much for education as well. She's been an eternal mentor for so many different people around Florida. And her story is just one of inspiration and also hard work.
Oh my God. Listen, I'm ready. Okay. Listen, I've got my pad. I got my pen. This is going to be so good. I'm so ready to take notes because this is going to be knowledge beyond college.
I'm ready too. And without further ado, Dr. Gail Kauwell. Thank you for coming and meeting with me today to talk a little bit about your history with the Florida Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And so I'm going to start out by asking you my favorite question that I ask everybody, and that's, what made you want to become a dietitian?
All right. Well, I had a hard time selecting a major when I was in college. Every course I took, I thought was great. I loved it. I eventually settled on psychology. In fact, I got my first bachelor's degree in psychology. My roommate was a child development major, though, and she had to take a nutrition course. She begged me to take this course with her. I had room in my schedule. Being the good, roommate that I was, I took the course, but I kept saying, like, what are you going to learn in this course? It's only like basic 4, like back in the day. But I had an outstanding professor. I absolutely loved the course. And as a psychology major and also somebody who really liked science, I could see how things really kind of fit together. That professor, she taught till she was age 91. So yeah, she, at that point was, an adjunct and teaching online. But nevertheless, she was just great. She had a huge influence on me. She had an influence, I think, on my teaching style as well, because she was so application oriented and everything. And her inspiration meant so much to me that when I was selected for the Academy's Medallion Award, I invited her. She was almost 90 then. I invited her to sit at my table, and she actually came. Unfortunately, on her way in, she tripped on the curb, broke her tooth, but she still came to the. Yeah, so that's dedication. Anyway, after taking my first nutrition course, I decided I kind of mapped out a plan for how I could come back as a postdoc and get my nutrition degree. And as I was doing that, my department chair called me in one day and said, "Oh, I think you should apply for a dietetic internship." I had no idea what a dietitian did. I just like nutrition. So, but I took her advice and I applied for an internship. At the time, you were only allowed to apply to 2 places. One of the places that I applied to decided that year that they were going to close their program for the year. So I was really lucky that I got my other choice, and the rest is history.
Wow. And did you know at that point what you wanted to do with this dietetic degree, or you were still kind of playing it by ear?
No, I just thought, oh, okay, my department chair says I should go do an internship. I'll trust her judgment. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I mean, I thought I was going to go get a master's degree essentially, but I didn't know what I would do with it. I just really liked it. And, that was way before we were talking about eating disorders and stuff like that. But, still I saw that there was sort of this mind, body, food connection. So I probably would have gone somewhere along those lines. But I really liked my internship. I really enjoyed clinical nutrition. So, that's kind of where I sort of headed for a while.
Cool. And then how did you get involved with the Florida Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, which was FDA at the time?
Yeah, so I moved to Florida to take my first job as a full-time registered dietitian. I worked in Fort Myers at what was then Lee Memorial. Now I think it's Lee Health System or something like that. There was one other dietitian. She was part of the reason that I took the position because she had some experience and was a little older, and I thought I'd have a really good mentor, and she was. She invited me to the first meeting of the Colusa District, then Colusa District Dietetic Association. We were a small district. I think we had like 12 members, but we did a lot. We, did National Nutrition Month, things. We did health fairs and stuff like that. I wrote a weekly Q&A question for the Fort Myers News Press, and our association got $10 for every article I wrote. So that's how we got our money to be able to, do things, because obviously 12 people membership dues was not going to really amount to too much. So that's how I got started, being involved, and I never stopped after that.
Wow. So during your time at FAND, you did so many different things, but one of the ones that gets talked about a lot is your involvement in legislative issues. So we know that the Florida licensure bill was written in 1985, but it took a lot of years until it got passed and didn't get passed until the year that you were president of the
Right.
Florida Academy. Can you tell me a little bit about what those years were like within the state level?
It took a lot of perseverance, as you can imagine. Again, it was a very dedicated group of dietitians who were committed to the cause. We had a lot of ups and downs, little victories were great. We celebrated those, but we also had our ups and downs. And as you pointed out, it wasn't until 1988 that we got it passed. But, really, I was out of Florida for a couple of years because I got married. My husband at the time was in the service. Came back to Florida in 82. So that's how I got back into the Florida Dietetic Association. I took a job at the University of Florida, and Chris Staple was one of my colleagues, and she was very involved in FDA too. She was the president like 83, 84, and she put a huge effort into, really kind of getting things started. A couple of other former presidents, Linda Levine, Judy McGinty, of course, Clara Lawhead was really involved with it. Pam Smith. I mean, Kathy Christie. I don't want to forget anybody, but there were a lot of people who were involved in, trying to get a bill written, get it heard. We did a lot of visiting to legislators. We went to their offices up in Tallahassee, also their local offices, did a lot of testimony in front of committees whenever we could get heard. We didn't always, sometimes we thought we'd be on the agenda. We'd drive up and, 3 hours later from Gainesville, be in Tallahassee and never have that chance. But, like I said, there's a lot of perseverance, dedication, and also just networking with friends and colleagues who are outside of the profession. In fact, my dean at the time, he was going to testify for us, and I was also going up to testify. He had another engagement. I had to take a qualifying exam. And so he actually arranged for us to fly up in a private plane, so we could go testify and then, get back in time for what we had to do. So, this friends like that and colleagues and acquaintances that were also very helpful. Our first lobbyist, I would say, was not too helpful, but during my presidency, that's when we hired Ken Sarvis, and he and Christine just did a fabulous job of pounding the pavement in Tallahassee. And, the rest of us kind of helped too, but they were the ones that were constantly there. So, yeah, it was a great time. It was learned a lot that I never would have learned any other way. So there's nothing like trial by fire. If you think about, oh, do I have experience for doing this? No, but we just, tried to learn as we went, and it turned out great.
I think that's amazing. One of the things that has been coming up in these interviews, and I like to think about our younger dietitians that could be listening to this, is I keep pointing out there wasn't internet at the time. You couldn't just send an email to find out if you were going to be on the schedule. And so
Mhm.
a lot of our stories are people driving places and having to have these big ornate meetings. So I think this is a perfect example of just the perseverance that was needed to be able to pass a legislation like this. Why was it so important? Why did we need this?
Well, obviously, the main reason was always to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. I mean, we can even say today, people were afraid all of a sudden our salaries were going to get out of the roof and things like that. I mean, we had opposition from people like the Florida Medical Association, Hospital Association, rather, the health foods, stores who had very powerful lobbyists with deep pockets. And had we not pursued it, we could have actually had, massage therapists or, these people that had no degrees whatsoever put forth legislation and, actually could have had to fall under their legislation, which would have been a lot less strict in terms of qualifications and things like that, which I think, would have really compromised our, our integrity, our ethics and things like that to have to, be under a law that was really, substandard. Now, that of course didn't happen. Maybe it never would have happened, but it's a very big possibility. And, by having legislation and having licensure, it's the way that we are able to, continue to make sure that we endorse people who have the qualifications, who can practice safely, who can, read the literature, the evidence-based literature, know what is appropriate for our clientele, for our public, for community health and things like that. So, and I think that's why it's so important. And without that, it's like the Wild West. Anybody could practice. Some people may have heard about stories that, for example, Clara Lawhead's 6-year-old daughter had a professional certificate from, I think it was the National Nutrition Association or something like that, along with Victor Herbert, who was a very famous researcher, did a lot of work with vitamin B12 and hematology and stuff. His dog had a professional certificate from them, and there was also a cat. So, the qualifications, nobody was really looking at, did people, actually take nutrition courses? Did they study the science and biochemistry of nutrition and dietetics? No, it's just like, I think there was a newsletter that came out that sort of, there were the two brightest stars. If you want to go open a practice, nutrition practice would be, the two brightest states would be California and Florida, because all you had to do was open an office. Didn't have to have any other qualifications. So, yeah, to me, that's, why, it was so important to make sure that people, weren't duped by, people who were out there, peddling things that, potentially could do harm and in some cases did do harm.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in that time, there was so much going on with the supplements coming out in the natural health food store.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
health was a big deal in the late 80s, early 90s, but it's like that today too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't believe how much is sort of swinging around again. But they say if you live long enough, you see it all come around again. So
We are trying to update our bill right now as some of the same kinds of concerns have been coming out, of course. And so one of the things we've done is we were looking at some of the incentives and things that you guys did with legislators to get them on board with your bill. And some of the information that came up was the Turkey Day. And I was hoping you could explain what Turkey Day was for us.
sure. Well, Turkey Day was a sort of a take on what was referred to as turkey bills back then. So, and I don't know if they still have turkey bills or not, but it was an opportunity for like a legislator in a particular district to essentially pass a legislation that was really only going to benefit their district. And so those were referred to as turkey bills. So, we sort of took a play on that and had a turkey day. We had it during National Nutrition Month. We had a company, and I believe it was called Cuddy Farms, but we had a company that we had a relationship with, one of the sort of sales reps, and they donated the turkey every year. And there was somebody in the Capitol building cafeteria. Chris Staple worked with them because at the time she was then by then our executive director for FDA, now the Academy. And she would every year they'd come up with a different recipe. So it might be turkey chili or turkey spaghetti or turkey breast or something like that. We'd rent out the 22nd floor of the Capitol building, which has got a beautiful view over Tallahassee. Rented linens, tables, china, had music, balloons, decorations, and things like that, and then sent out invitations to every single legislator and to one guest. So they would be invited for lunch for Turkey Day. One year we gave them a cookbook that we had developed with others through, I think it was Palm Air Spa, maybe, rack my brain on that one. But anyway, so that was one of the things that we did to, sort of just have some fun with legislators and get to know them in a more social environment that, we thought would be, kind of fun for them and a play on their turkey bills.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you think it helped them to get to know you and the type of things that dietitians did?
Well, I think it did, but part of it too is it's always relationship building. So anything you can do, some people may take to something like that more than others. I mean, obviously not everybody that we invited came, but it's part of, PR relationship building. And I think that's a lot of what it takes. You have to be present in order to get people's attention. And, if you do it in a nice way and be respectful and try to make something fun for them, I think, it's memorable.
So talking about memorable. So as I was looking through the newsletters, I came across the yogurt cheese funnel cookbook. And I was fascinated by this for some reason. I showed it to my husband. I was like, look, there was a yogurt cheese funnel. I don't know what this is. And it appears that you helped create the cookbook that went with the yogurt cheese funnel. And some of that money went back to the Florida Dietetic Association, just like your earlier articles did. You have to tell me, did it work?
Yeah.
Do you have one still? What is the yogurt cheese
funnel? I appreciate that you told me you were going to ask me about the yogurt cheese funnel, because otherwise I never would have had it out. But I knew exactly where to go get it. Yes, I do have a yogurt cheese funnel. I will show it to you. It is flat, but you actually make it into a funnel. And, I've lost a little strength over this accident, but it's got like a very fine gauge net. And I'm sorry, I can't really get it to stick today.
Okay.
There we go. So it's a funnel. You put your yogurt in it and you put it like under a glass container or something, and it drains out. And at the end of the day, you get solid yogurt without any of the liquid and stuff. And it's a great substitute like for cream cheese. So this is how it was packaged. And then did 2 cookbooks. I am not responsible for writing the cookbooks. I wrote the foreword and I did all the nutritional analysis. So this was the first one, Not Just Cheesecake. And then the second one was Snack to Your Heart's Content. And so I did, the nutritional analysis for them and wrote the foreword. But this was an invention from 2 Gainesville women who were just entrepreneurs and, were looking for ways to cut down on, fat, but still be able to eat things that they enjoyed. And because of, sort of what I did, the pro bono work that I did for them, they were happy to allow us to, sell them at events and things like that. And we would get a small portion of the profit from that.
Were they big sellers?
You know what? I don't remember them being big sellers, but I don't really know. I mean, maybe we made $400 or $500 or something, but it's not like we made $4,000. But dietitians don't always want to buy things either. So we're really just trying to sell them to each other, right?
You needed an infomercial. It seems like an infomercial.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and to your point before about, not having the internet and everything, I tell you the one thing I wished I had back in the day when I was president and right before then when we were, working so hard for, to get our licensure bill passed, is I would have died for a cell phone. I would have died. And I knew back then there some very wealthy people who did have like big phones, phone cars, right? Car phones.
Chunky, the Zach
And
Morris, like Saved by the Bell.
it's like I mean, I could always think to myself, well, I wish I had one of those car phones right now. Who would have known we would have these cell phones that are so convenient? I mean, yeah,
I bet, especially since you were so busy. So you were
yeah.
finishing your doctorate, you were leading the charge for legislative issues. How did you get everything done?
I just persevered. I mean, I'm a very, I can be very focused on things. I knew what my priorities were, and, other things weren't my priorities. So, I wasn't out, toasting the town and going to see every movie and, all the things that, maybe other people were doing. My priorities were, work, school, and the association, and of course my dogs. I took good care of my dogs, and they were good companionship for me. But I wasn't married at the time, so that really helped too. I didn't have children, so I understand that people have all kinds of things in their lives that they sometimes have to take care of and handle. But those are my priorities, and I just worked all the time. I mean, but I wasn't ever afraid of work. I'm the oldest of six, and that's what I did growing up. So it was like, it just seemed like part of the drill for me.
What do you say to people that said they don't have time to be part of the profession or they don't care that much?
Well, I'm sorry if they don't care that much, because it is their profession. And, if that's your profession, I would hope that you would care some. But, I mean, in terms of people who don't have time, I think, everybody's life looks different. And everybody has, different priorities and things like that. So I completely understand that, not everybody would look at things the way that I might look at it. But that said, I think getting involved doesn't mean that you have to, run for president, or you have to, be the state legislative person. But there could be small things that you could do to be involved that would be helpful. And even nowadays, like, you see like with national legislative issues, for example, that, the academy makes it so easy to contact your legislature. That's a small thing that you could do. It doesn't take much time. It might take a little extra time if you want to personalize it, which is, usually recommended. But, think about it really, like getting involved doesn't have to, maybe that this time right now is not your time in your life to be involved heavily, but maybe there's a way that, you can do some small things, and build some connections that might, be helpful to your profession or association. I would say, in terms of myself personally, the volunteering that I have done has been, it's given me everything, like it's really, helped with my career in so many ways. Opportunities that I never would have had, friendships that I never would have developed, great friendships for, 40 years. I mean, some that are less than that, but still, I learned a lot that I never would have learned, stepped into roles that if you had told me I was going to do that, I would have said no way. But I did it anyway when I did the executive summary report for when our licensure law was under attack, and then found out I had to go and do a deposition. I was like, "Oh, you're kidding me!" But I mean, it was a good experience. Is it something I want to do every day of my life? No. But nevertheless, it was, a good experience. And, at the end of the day, it's, all those things sort of add up to, just being very fulfilling. So I would hope that, other people would have, opportunities that them feel like they did something that was, fulfilling, or they, gained some new friendships that they wouldn't have gained otherwise, or they took their career down another or up another level than what they would have had previously.
Absolutely. And I think that, you've set the tone, that the expectation is that we part of our profession. I know I was talking to some other former UF students that we knew you were to be part of the Gainesville Dietetic Association when you were an internship, and that
Yeah.
the expectation, and we're
Mhm.
so grateful for that expectation. That was all
Well,
leadership.
well, I'm grateful for you and all the others who have, continued on and taken the charge. I mean, that's just that in itself is very fulfilling. So you've done me proud.
Yay. All right. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit. So after the licensure law was finally passed, you were
Mhm.
originally going to be part of that first dietetics practice council, is what it said in the newsletter.
Mhm.
And then suddenly you got replaced by a food supplement guy. But then ultimately you did finally get to be part of that council between 1995 and 2004. What was that experience like for you after you had worked so hard to get legislation passed?
Yeah. So again, that was something that, I would say was very fulfilling to be on the other end, to know that we had the opportunity here to make sure that people that were being licensed, had the qualifications and the training, could legally practice, that, we were, out there protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So I think, that was very rewarding. Again, I have to say, my first meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? Because the amount of reading that I had to do in preparation ahead of time was huge. And then, the 3 hour drive, because back then the meetings were all in person. So, the drive up, the drive back, it all, took a lot of time. But again, I had the chance to work with, people who have become, great friends, Lucille Bessler, Kathy Christie. I mean, that those were, like I got to work with, I had the privilege of working with some really top-notch people that was really enjoyable. So I think, again, it was one of those things where, yes, it took time, but it was very fulfilling, and, helped me to get new experiences and gain new friendships, and, feel like I was doing good by the public, and for our profession. So yeah, sometimes I think about doing it again, but
Well, do you think it felt different for you knowing you were part of passing that law? Like, did it feel almost like you were supposed to be there?
I don't know that I felt like that. I felt privileged to be there. I mean, it's, you don't just get to be on, you have to be, the Board of Medicine has to approve you and stuff like that. And so, I was very pleased to have been approved. I'll tell you a funny story, and I do believe this was my first meeting, but I left after work to drive up, and so I think I got there late at night. And so I packed real quickly and everything. And when I was driving up, I decided I was going to wear my sneakers, but I forgot to pack a pair of shoes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to go into a first meeting in a pair of sneakers. I mean, back in the day, things were, a little more formal. People now are really relaxed with dressing and stuff, right? So I called, Chris lived in Tallahassee. And of course, she's tiny. I mean, I have big feet. She's got tiny feet. I knew that there was not a chance in what. And when I got to Tallahassee and discovered it was too late to go to the store, and Amazon certainly wasn't going to bring me anything the next day because we didn't have it back then. So anyway, she called her assistant, her office assistant, and she had a pair of shoes that she brought to me before the meeting started the next day, and they fit well enough.
Oh my gosh, walking in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. So, while at UF and now at UCF, you have passionately inspired lots of students to get involved in dietetics practice. In fact, when you left UF, they set up a Gail Kauwell scholarship at FAN to honor you. What role would you say that the Florida Academy and the National Academy has had on your career in general?
Oh, I mean, I guess I sort of, answered this a little while ago. I mean, it's like I said, it's been everything. I mean, it really has opened up doors for me that I don't think I would have had opened up otherwise. It's been very fulfilling. It's, helped me build a network, gain some terrific friendships, learn things that I never would have learned otherwise. So I think it's really been, not that, I mean, I think it's really, I guess you could say, sort of boosted my ability to do things because I have gained from those experiences. And, and then even, some of the things like, it's nice to be recognized for what you do. I'm not going to deny that. And so, I mean, some of the recognitions that I've gotten, I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't done those things. So, it helps you feel a sense of accomplishment that you have done something for your profession, for other people, for former students. I live for my former students, that I wouldn't have had those opportunities otherwise.
And what is your hope for the future of dietetics across our state as we look forward?
Well, I certainly hope that the changes to the licensure law are ones that will, continue to be, that will get it passed, and they'll be the things that, we really want to make sure that we are still protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public and guarding against quackery, misinformation, and all those other things which are so rampant out there. And you all know everybody thinks they can practice nutrition. I'm always like, really? You took my nutrition course?
If that.
But, I would like to see dietitians. I think, there's room for expanding our practice. You know that I've had this, recent accident. So I have home health care come to the house. And I'm thinking like, dietitian could do this and more, like, you don't need to send me a nurse. You could send me a dietitian that could do all these same things that the nurse is doing. Somebody's probably going to kill me for saying this, but I mean, and maybe there are more things that they do in other settings, because I don't need, dressing changes and stuff like that. But, taking a blood pressure, checking my oxygen level, taking my temperature, you ask me how I'm feeling, what my pain level is. Dietitians can do that, and they can do more. And, when you think about, the importance of nutrition to the healing process and stuff like that, I think, and that's just one example, but there are so many other ways that I think we could expand our scope of practice in a safe ways, and ways that we can practice. And I do see that dietitians have been doing that. I love that there are dietitians that are, trained to use CoreTrack, or that use, demonstrate how to do an insulin injection and, test, blood glucose and things like that. I really would like to see us be thought of as indispensable rather than an afterthought. I was in the hospital for about 5 days, and I think I was 10 days in inpatient rehab. I never saw a dietitian. Never. I thought that was pretty, okay, as I'm on a regular diet, I don't have diabetes or anything, but you would have thought I would have had somebody come in and, see if I was malnourished or what. But anyway, so not, don't think of us as an afterthought. We're indispensable. I'd like to see us build a stronger association. I think, things have, times have changed, and the way that people are involved has changed. And maybe this is just pining for the past or something, but that really together, when we're together, we can do more together. And, I think that's the way to sort of strengthen and build our profession and the association. And, I just hope that we can always be the best that we can be, provide the best possible care. And that's kind of what I would hope for the future.
Well, I love that. There's so many, it's a wish list of many items for us to be working on as we move forward in the profession. Well, thank you so much for having this chat with me. That was the end of my questions, and I really appreciate you taking your time to talk about the past today.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, Catherine. And I wish you all the best in this coming out. And thanks for all that you and your board are doing to, continue to take up the charge of really promoting our profession and the good that we can do for the people that we serve.
So, Kalitha, what did you think of this one?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so first, can we say I just love how she took the advice of her roommate to just take that leap of faith and take that dietetics course. Like, shout out to her roommate, right? Like, if we didn't have her roommate, we wouldn't have a Dr. Gail Kauwell. So thank you so much to that roommate who inspired her to take that dietetics course.
Absolutely. So inspiring. So glad that she ended up in dietetics with us. And can I just say, I really enjoyed seeing the cheese funnel in action.
Oh my gosh, that was so great, right? I love how, our Trailblazers, they have their props ready to go, not only just with everything that they've done with dietetics, they have the proof in the pudding to show for it.
Again, another amazing episode showing why Florida Dietetics is so instrumental on the national stage.
Oh my God. Listen, we literally owe it to them to keep this momentum going because they have laid such a solid foundation for us. So we have to keep this momentum going to pass the baton to the future dietitians.
And with that, we're ready to see you next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye, guys.